At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Sean McNulty of the Wake Up Newsletter here at the Ankler here in New York City on Thursday, December 19th. I think Richard Rushfield got locked in a podcast booth for his Tales from the 90s podcast he's doing this month, so he will not be joining us today, but he'll be back for a special holiday edition of the pod next week. So I am joined in Los Angeles by Elaine Lowe, as always, and Janice Min. Elaine, Christmas came early. Janice
know,
is here.
Special guest.
Janice, what do we owe the pleasure?
Come on. I begged to come on today. You let me on.
I was like, my Slack broken?
She had to check in with our booking producer and everything.
Exactly. I'm like, Janice, I'm not sure we have room for you, but I'll see what I can do.
I didn't get bumped. I'm really flattered.
Nice to have you, Janice. And Nicole Laporte will also be joining us a little later on to talk about the rather significant and surprise revival of the Hollywood feature spec market in the second half of the year we've been seeing. But Elaine and Janice, it is December 19th. Is anybody returning your phone calls anymore, or slim pickings out there?
Desperately trying to get everybody at the agencies to call me back before they shut down for the next 2 weeks.
Please call Elaine. Somebody, please call
please.
Elaine today. Yes. That time of year, Janice, in the industry, it always comes sooner than we think, I think.
It's a hard stop here. Like, I think people in other industries don't necessarily realize that, right? Like, it is like serious pencils down.
Yeah, you'll get nothing done. This is over with.
But
so,
you will. But Sean McNulty will be publishing a newsletter next week.
That doesn't stop me, Janice, because you know I live outside I'm a rebel. I live outside the rules. So you will be getting wake ups all next week.
It will be holiday recipes. What else are you? What
are
else
we going to get a Christmas Day wake up from you, Sean?
Richard requested one, so I have to do it. It's unfortunately the gift he wanted from me this year.
He wants to read it aloud to his kids that morning.
Exactly. Yeah,
what greater gift is
the
there?
New Rushfield tradition for Christmas. So unfortunately, that's going to be the case. So yes, come see what I write next week. I have some fun ideas, Janice. I'll be sending those to you shortly. So yeah, some fun things are going on. So if you have any questions, could be a little mailbag, Santa's mailbag.
Oh, Sean McNulty mailbag. I like that.
Just drop me a note there. You can respond to the wake up and reach me there. Anyway, but Elaine, your notes have been answered. Your phone calls and notes in the mail to Netflix. Not only have a Carlos Alcaraz docuseries, you have a Rafa Nadal docuseries at Netflix. I mean, they listened to you. These campaigns finally paid off.
Christmas came early, Sean. My write-in campaign has worked. Me forging the letters of 6,000 tennis fans around the world, handwritten notes to Netflix.
Exactly.
Do you think they've built this into the marketing campaign for these shows now that they're like, we got to get it mentioned on the Ankler podcast by Elaine Lowe?
Yeah, exactly. This is the pinnacle, Elaine.
I'll have you both know, I was talking to an agent yesterday, a high-level agent, who said he, quote, does not mind the tennis talk on our pod. So if that's not a glowing testimonial, I don't know what is.
Does not mind. All right, listen, I'll take that's a top 2 box, I think, right? There you go. Well, hopefully your kids are prepared to see less of mom in 2025 because she will definitely have a little less free time in her hands. But one very active part of the business this week for sure is the media business. And we have Lachlan Cartwright joining us, who have plenty of scoop going on and joins us once again here in New York City. Lachlan, good to see you.
G'day. Good to be here again, Sean.
I feel like at this point we need to get you a proper Elaine Lowe professional podcast background there, buddy, for the podcast. I mean, come on. It's been a few times here. Elaine, we need some tips here. You have to help them out.
Yeah. First, you get the bookshelf from West Elm, and then you build it.
Got it.
And then you populate it with a bunch of children's dinosaur books. So that's my decorating tip for you, Lachlan.
I do have my first wood framed, my first front page for the New York Post behind me. So
all right.
I'll get a couple of the Ankler scoops up on the wall for next year.
Lachlan, I'm afraid to ask, what was your first New York Post front page story cover?
The headline, Janice, is "Take My Gun, Please," and a super holding a firearm after I uncovered that a cop, while trying to make an arrest uptown, had basically deputized the civilian by handing him his gun, totally against the New York NYPD playbook. And it was a massive yarn because it was one of the few times that that has ever happened. And the NYPD confirmed it to us later that day. So that piece was back in 2009 and got me really starting here.
That's wild.
Damn, that's frame-worthy.
Yeah,
That's a
that
good
is
one.
frame-worthy.
Nicely done. Well, another frame one for the frame this week there, Lachlan. A lot going on over at ABC and Disney, dominating the headlines a lot. The strife inside ABC News. Just to briefly recap, get people up to speed, Disney, of course, settled its lawsuit from Donald Trump regarding a misstatement from George Stephanopoulos on his This Week show earlier this year, saying Trump had been convicted of rape instead of sexual abuse. And Disney agreed to give, donate, pay, whatever word you want to use here, $15 million to Trump's future, quote, presidential library. Put that in quotes as you like, as well as $1 million to cover legal costs. This trial would have been brought in Florida, Trump's favorite state, of course, and a judge had already refused to outright dismiss the case in early stages. So a lot flying around on this one. Lachlan, what's going on inside ABC News this week?
Well, there's a lot of staffers who are incredibly pissed off that Disney folded like a cheap suit in this settlement. As you said, $15 million to a presidential library, to a president that, we're not sure how many books he reads and what he's going to do with those presidential papers. Someone who is known to destroy documents.
Bring down Mar-a-Lago, I think, will be the first destination.
There's a whole debate about what that money will end up being used for. But this litigation had been going on for months since Stephanopoulos made those remarks back in March. And out of nowhere, on Saturday afternoon, Fox News broke the news that Disney had settled for this sum of money. And staffers really just found out about it through push alerts, and pretty furious that the company has caved in this fashion. And the person who's also pretty angry is George Stephanopoulos himself. And I opened the piece with this scene at this holiday party that happened on the Upper East Side at the weekend, where he comes in with his wife, Ali, to a big media holiday party. The likes of Dean Baquet are there, and Joe Kahn and Tina Brown, and a bunch of the liberal media elite are all hobnobbing. But he comes in early with his wife, Ali. He leaves early. And when one guest asks him his thoughts, he makes it known that he is none too happy, but says he can't talk about it. Now, playing out in the backdrop of all of this has been his own contract negotiations that have been going on for at least the last couple of months. He's repped over at CAA by Alan Berger. And as my piece published late yesterday, the LA Times then confirmed that he had re-signed, and we were able to confirm that news as well, that he's re-signed with GMA, which, as someone who's on around $25 million, is a pretty big deal. The thought is, did this settlement somehow play out in his contract negotiations, and did he manage to avoid taking a haircut by agreeing to go along with this?
Yeah, certainly some curious timing there. Janice is buzzing in your world this week, I would imagine.
For sure. Lachlan, some questions for you that I just think you should explain to the audience. What, typically in a let's say with a more traditional president-elect coming into office, what would a media outlet do with a lawsuit like this?
They would fight it. You've got to remember that it's always, the onus is always on the person bringing the suit to prove that, in this case, that there was defamation and that there was actual malice on the behalf of Stephanopoulos. Most media outlets would fight this. The thing to remember here is this was brought in Florida, which is a jurisdiction that would be friendly to Trump, much like it was friendly to Hulk Hogan, who brought action against Gawker. If this was brought in New York, you've got to think that if it reached a jury, that Trump would not have won. But there's other factors playing out, especially for Disney, who, clearly don't want to have 4 years of this playing out when they've got other business decisions going on. They had the whole Don't Say Gay matter with DeSantis that really dragged on and dragged them down. And so I think there were factors from both sides, but really most media companies would fight this. It sets a really bad precedent. And it then emboldens Donald Trump to bring more litigation. We saw that last week. He's now suing the Des Moines paper over a poll about a state that he ended up winning. So it creates the potential for a chilling effect, and it creates a situation where Donald Trump and people around Donald Trump feel more emboldened to bring frivolous lawsuits against media organizations. And that is something that people are very worried about coming into next year. The two themes of my piece were, after interviews with 20 executives and journalists in the media, were litigation and layoffs.
Wait, Lachlan, I want to ask you about what you say about MSNBC in your piece also. So in Lachlan's piece, it's a lot of things. It's kind of way jam-packed and very full stocking for the holiday. So MSNBC, they are also wrestling with how to cover politics in this era when people have a really changed view of politics and a changed appetite, right? Or there is a fear that's certainly setting in.
Yeah, and so the other backdrop is SpinCo, which we know was announced just a few weeks ago, where MSNBC and CNBC are coming away from the mothership of NBC under the auspices of Mark Lazarus. And as I report, Laz has made remarks to people in meetings that he thinks that MSNBC isn't a friendly platform to Republicans, and he wants to see more conservative voices on MSNBC. And he's even floated the idea that dayside programming on MSNBC should be opinion-led programming with more Republican voices. He also acknowledges that he doesn't want MSNBC to go the way of CNN and be straight down the middle. He knows that the audience is definitely left-leaning, but he wants to bring in more conservative voices, which has several people over there concerned about changing the direction and losing the audience. They're already sliding massively in the ratings. And they think that a lot of people I speak to over there think that if they change the tone and tenor too dramatically by bringing on Republicans and not fact-checking them, they could lose the core audience even further.
How much of the inclination to run more daytime opinion program do you think is related to the separation of the NBC News apparatus now that MSNBC will be part of SpinCo instead?
Yeah, I think that plays heavily into that because MSNBC relies on correspondents in the field who are NBC News correspondents, their Washington bureau, particularly during those dayside hours. And so a workaround for that would just be to flip the programming to opinion-led programming. And then you wouldn't need a whole news apparatus. And now this is all happening at the same time that there are reports floating that Rashida Jones is on her way out. She hasn't denied that in meetings, I'm told, to producers, although MSNBC, a spokesperson there, has pushed back that she is leaving. But the thought, if she does leave, is Casey Sullivan potentially would step up. He runs CNBC currently, and he would step up to run both MSNBC and CNBC under Mark Lazarus.
But Lachlan, these declining fortunes at MSNBC and CNN also, they're tied into ratings, which have taken like an unbelievable hit, and cord cutting, which is Sean's favorite topic.
It is a factor.
It's absolutely a factor. But you also reported that this is resulting in some pay cuts for people we know on air.
Yeah, I think here at the Ankler, we've turned the haircuts into a microbeat. In the fall into the winter, we've really owned this storyline from our reporting about CNN and Chris Wallace and then MSNBC and Rachel Maddow. And then in the Cracking Yarn that we published yesterday, I report that both Joy Reid and Stephanie Rule have been presented with new deals, but with haircuts, and that is still being negotiated. I also report that Jonathan Lemire, who recently was named to the Morning Joe lineup, who had been presenting the Way Too Early show, took a haircut for his latest deal. And this is just endemic throughout the industry. The big payday deals are long gone. And as I reported in one of the last pieces, a top agent told me that flat is the new up, that if you get a deal that is the previous sum of the last deal, that's a win. The workaround agents seem to be doing is trying to extend these deals out. So instead of a 3-year deal, they're getting a 5-year deal. That's what I reported with Rachel Maddow. So while she's not on $30 million a year, she's on $25 million, but that's a 5-year deal. So it plays out over a greater period of time. But that's something we're going to see play out again into next year. There are more big people up Michael Strahan, Robert Roberts. And so the negotiations and the discussions are going to be around either taking a haircut or being re-upped, but flat.
Yeah. But also, like, where are they going to go? Where's George Stephanopoulos going to get any more? Who's paying him more money? Like, there's no bidding war. There's no CBS isn't going to up his, the paycheck from ABC. Like, not that George wanted to leave or whatever it might be and the timing of it, but that's the reality. I think a lot of these people are just coming to terms with Lachlan, it seems like, is like, hey, this is better than, and probably what their agents are telling them is that there's not really much else out there unless you want to go and start your own Twitter channel and start your own, do the Megyn Kelly thing, which I don't think a lot of people are looking to do. So that seems the marketplace is dictating a lot of this too, I think.
Yeah, big time, mate. Big time. Chris Wallace went out and said, I'm going to start my own, pod. Right. I'm going to start my own platform. Let's see how that goes. Don Lemon, one of our favorites here at the Ankler Pod, tried, to do that on X, and that didn't work out. He's now trying to do that on YouTube. Some people are successful, like Megyn Kelly, but that's more on the conservative bent. And that is not the bent that Chris Wallace or Don Lemon really work off of. So you're right. There is a major bidding wars going on for top talent. And so the networks know that they can present someone with a deal on a reduced amount of money, and they're going to have to take it or leave it.
Lachlan, why do you pronounce his name Don Lemon? Isn't he?
Why not? Favorite part of the podcast.
Why not? Let's have a bit of fun. This is such a...
It's the Lachlan house style.
Everyone takes himself so seriously in this world. I've been reporting on it for several years, and I think the people that I enjoy talking with, the present company included, know that we can have a bit of fun, and we can have a bit of banter, and we can have a chinwag and have a laugh with it. Don, if you're listening, I'm a big fan, mate. Let's squeeze those lemons together sometime.
I think you mean Le Mans.
Those lemons, yes,
Very
exactly.
Nice. Very nice, Elaine. Well, Lachlan and Janice, though, I do want to, you talk about the ratings dip and all right, maybe they're going to bring more Republicans in, Lachlan. I just feel like we're also just in this dip in the news cycle. I mean, we just see even today, the government shutdown is now looming. Like the real news is going to, Trump's going to come in and there's going to be a lot of things going on again to kind of, I think a month from now, this will feel this environment we're in with the ratings and the storylines, it will feel very, very different. I don't know. What's your take on that, both of you?
I'm pumped for next year.
Sure.
I think there's just going to be an absolute riches of cracking yarns, and hopefully we'll be breaking all of them here at the Ankler.
Sure.
But I think the audience here, the audience that, a lot of other places is going to take some time out over the next few weeks and come back and want to know what the hell is going on out there, because there's going to be disruption and there's going to be change. And I think that brings with it opportunity. And I think people will slowly plug back in after the inauguration.
Yeah. Janice, where's your head out on this? Am I totally off or no?
No, I think by the way, when Lachlan says there will be many cracking yarns next year, I think he means it will be total chaos and I
like the way Lachlan puts it a lot better, right? I say Janice. Yeah.
I think this lawsuit, the Trump litigation, I think he has found it to be a very effective strategy. I think Disney proved the case. I'm very curious to see what happens at CBS. Right. And I think there's a lawsuit. It's a lawsuit, right, Lachlan, that he's brought against CBS News?
Against 60 Minutes. And in that one, Janice, he also similar to the Florida case against ABC, he went judge shopping and he found a jurisdiction in Texas that would be sympathetic to his claims.
Interesting. Okay.
Wow. This all makes me think of a piece that our colleague Minori Revenger did with the woman who is the host of this successful YouTube show called Chicken Shop Date. So I was educated about Chicken Shop Date. So, yes, Elaine loves it. It's like this. It's this YouTube show, 8 minutes long. It costs $6,000 an episode to produce, and it has more viewers than anything on MSNBC or CNN combined. So I think we're seeing this influencer model of obviously not just on YouTube, but also impacting news. And there's no way that you're not looking at these budgets of how content that's getting more watched is getting produced, the cost of it, and thinking, why are we not in that game too? It's a tough calculation when your ratings are hurting. It's easier when your ratings are great. But it's amazing to me that Fox News would never wring their hands and say, oh, we need to have more Democrats on because Joe Biden won.
Right. Yeah, that conversation didn't happen 4 years ago. Yeah.
And,
excellent point, Janice.
Yeah. So I'll be very curious to see how the response is. But I think every time that these CNN or MSNBC has tried to bring more people into the fold that have a different political view, it never quite works, right, Lachlan?
And speaking of the YouTube and social factor, Lachlan, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned in your story that Rachel Maddow has her own little YouTube series now, which, I mean, to what extent is that to justify the contract paycheck versus also reaching out to newer, younger viewers who
25
aren't
million
likely to be watching cable news? Right. They're on YouTube.
Yeah. Yes, taking off of the public service announcements. These are sort of 5-7 minute clips that she's been doing with her team, just putting them up on YouTube around Trump's cabinet picks. And to your point, Elaine, it's twofold. It is to target new audiences through YouTube that MSNBC has huge exposure over, but it's also to help justify this $25 million deal that she's on that really is around her hosting one night a week plus some pods and docs. And so she's been doing these over the last few weeks. They're getting a good reception. And I think you might see other MSNBC talent doing the same. Ari Melba's had great success on YouTube. My understanding is Nicole Wallace wants to also do something similar. So that is a way for them to target a younger audience and try and bring them back, onto the TV screens.
Yeah, I got to wonder, how do you create that pipeline, right? Like, how do you create that road for a 22-year-old viewer now to make it all the way to MSNBC or Fox News or CNN or whatever?
That's a 50-year road, Elaine.
No, well, I'm serious. How do you get them there? In 10 years, they're a consumer with income.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hope is that, the exposure to a Maddow and to, one of these sort of A blocks or shorter A blocks that she became well known for, particularly during the first Trump administration, may mean that that new audience converts to tuning in at 9 p.m. on a Monday night.
Yeah. Well, note I got some sort of a PR news blast from Fox News saying they were the most viewed news brand on YouTube in November. So even they're, as much as Fox News is about the linear, Lachlan, even they're starting to tout in the PR, just how big they are on
I love
social.
how all these networks just spin the numbers, by the way.
It's great. It's great.
You get these releases and they're huge on TikTok and they're massive on MS and I have to then drill down throughout where the hell are they getting these figures from? Like, how do I even attribute this? Like, is this an intern collating this, or is it like arbitrary, you're just plucking numbers out of the sky? I mean, it's like the fact checking that I try and do when you get these releases. It takes a bit of heavy lifting because you're just like, where are you guys plucking your numbers at? You can't all be number one on YouTube month or TikTok or whatever platform suits the press release.
It's like streaming numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Number one on Vine. Congratulations. But
remember Vine?
Rest in peace, Vine, which is now, of course, YouTube Shorts. But I guess I should all be hanging out at the Polo Bar a little bit longer. Lachlan, is that do I drop Janice's name to get in there? How do I get in that, or what happens here with the Polo Bar? That's the hang, right? I have to go find where all the gossip is. Is that it?
Yeah, Monday night there was a bunch of MSNBC and CNBC personalities. You had Joe Scarborough dining with Donnie Douche. You had Aaron Ross Sorkin was at another table. And so you've got to think that these blokes don't want to have to move too far.
Yeah. Is there a Polo Bar in New Jersey or no?
There is not.
Englewood Cliffs? No, there's not one there yet?
Maybe Ralph Lauren should think about a Polo Bar.
Hey, free idea, man.
The New Jersey Polo Bar. Can you imagine? The outpost, just so they can whip over from Englewood and go over for a steak
in an office
dinner.
park.
But there is this fear that they're all going to get pushed out of 30 Rock.
Right. I mean, Spinco, we don't know.
To be based over at Englewood Cliffs. There is a little minibus, by the way, that they run that goes from Manhattan over to Englewood. And I've heard horror stories of that minibus. And so you can just imagine some of the top talent. I mean, what I think is going to be the workaround, they're going to have a flash studio in Manhattan somewhere for top talent. But sadly, a lot of production staff and other staff are going to have to work out of Jersey or Connecticut. But yeah, the Polo Bar was quite the scene on Monday night, as I report.
Hot topic of conversation. But anyway, another great read from Lachlan. As Janice said, there's even more in there from Politico, the White House beat, UTA. You had a lot of stuff going on in the column there, Lachlan.
I stuffed the stocking full I
That's
just was
it.
like,
We
let's
appreciate
just
it, mate.
tell our
That's,
readers everything. Have a
that's
happy
it.
holidays. And there's a lot of juice in that column. So enjoy.
Always generosity from Lachlan. So great to see you as always, man. And
Cheers,
a
mate.
very early Christmas to you as well. So thanks for joining.
Appreciate it. I've loved being here this year. So thanks for having me.
See you soon. Elsewhere at the Ankler this week, Eric Barmack. He's using all the latest AI toys, Janice. I always love when Eric dives into, he's literally all these things you read about. He just goes in and uses them all the time. Like, what can these things do? It's kind of fun to read, Janice.
It's amazing with Eric because this is what I appreciate about Eric. When we started this column, Real AI, this was when you had to hide and pretend you weren't using AI tools.
Right.
And Eric's like, yeah, I'm using them. And this is what they do.
Yeah.
And he's good. And it's fascinating stuff. But I loved Female Taxi Driver.
Yeah, so he played around with OpenAI's Sora, which recently expanded its availability this month. So as he asked what a female taxi driver would look like. He also had some fun recreating some Spielberg scenes, Janice, as well.
By the way, Female Taxi Driver looks like Posh Spice. Did you notice that resemblance?
Is that who she looks like? I was like,
she looks like
That's
Posh
pretty
Spice.
good.
Familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Victoria Beckham.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. Okay. Yeah, looks like a young Winona Ryder, maybe. Yeah, something in there. So yeah, that's for sure. So maybe a little bit, Janice. But a fun read from Eric. You can check that out over at theankler.com as well. But coming up next, Nicole Laporte is going to join us to dive into the unexpected revitalization of the Hollywood feature spec market. We'll be back in a moment.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.
Hi, I'm Elaine Lowe in Los Angeles, coming to you from the heart of Hollywood.
And I'm Minori Ravindran in London, reporting from the UK about the international market.
Together, we write the Series Business newsletter for The Ankler.
Series Business is a twice-weekly newsletter for paid subscribers to The Ankler that dives deep into everything you need to know about the rapidly evolving TV industry.
We've got an insider's perspective on where the jobs are, what's selling in the market, who's buying what kinds of shows, the new bottom line for budgets, and, of course, any and all industry shakeups.
Join us every Monday and Thursday for all the essential information you need for your job and career. Sign up to receive Series Business as part of a paid subscription on theankler.com.
All right, Ankler contributor Nicole Laporte joins us here on the pod again. Nicole, good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, as always, you had a good read this week at The Ankler, looking at the world of something called the feature spec market. And Millennial Lanes is giving me a blank stare there, Nicole. So please explain to the folks what the spec market is or was or is again in Hollywood and what you found in talking to a bunch of representatives around town this week. A bit of a revival here in the second half of 2024.
Yeah, well, Elaine, way back in 1990, someone may have told you about this. You may have heard this folklore. No, but yeah, in the 90s and into the early 2000s, the so-called spec market was just this crazy phenomenon. As you may or may not remember, people actually went to theaters. They actually needed to fill those theaters with movies every week.
Original scripts. Original scripts.
Yeah, this was
right.
this was way before IP and Marvel and all that. And also Hollywood, was flush with cash from the DVD market and other revenue streams. And so, yeah.
The 90s really were a special time.
The 90s were a special time.
They were a special time.
Richard and I always tell you, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and back then, to make it in Hollywood, screenwriters would just show up in droves, write an original script, and a lot of them would sell for, $1 million here, over $1 million. And this is, again, back in the 90s. And people like Joe Esterhaus, Shane Black, a lot of them were these kind of testosterone-y, very makeable, appealing, fun, action-packed movies that were just filling theaters. That all ended when we saw Hollywood turn to IP, when the TV business really started to take off and cable, and suddenly that's where viewers were migrating. And then, this is something that came up in conversations, like the model for how to make it in Hollywood was you came to Hollywood as a young person and you worked on a TV show. Like that was the way to get to the Holy Grail. or get to the brass ring and, work your way up, eventually become a showrunner, sell your TV show. So today there actually aren't even that many screenwriters who are just sitting there writing original scripts. But anyway, so that was then. And remarkably, just in the past 6 to 8 months, there actually have been these very big sales of scripts going for $1 million, $2 million, with no flashy actor attached, no flashy director, these so-called naked scripts. So yeah, we decided to check out what was going on here.
This is it's a thing. I track these in the Wake Up, all the, these deals that come out there. It's not just spec scripts. There's also short stories are hot, Nicole, and other, the other sources of material. But it's just not, they're not superhero movies. These are romantic dramas. These are crime things. These are other genres that have been kind of dormant. On the feature, as you say, TV took over a lot of this genre. Features are starting to come back. And, the success we've seen of other Anyone But You's and No Hard Feelings, like things that okay, there seems to be, people are coming back around to this stuff that, as you said, went away for a long time. So what are the agents and managers kind of telling you about this right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a couple things at work. One, we're definitely in this post Netflix spending like crazy period where there's a lot of cutbacks and everyone is not just chasing Netflix and therefore spending a ton of money on like this ready-made package. It's so-called plug and play with Ben Affleck and George Clooney and all the biggest names attached.
Very much so the vibe in TV, though.
That's still that way.
Interesting, yeah. And it was that has been, look at these movies, Red One, Wolves, which obviously didn't work out. But that's what everyone was looking for as they were trying to, in that kind of arms race, the streaming arms race. And as people are cutting back, they're not spending as much money, as those, like the examples I just gave, aren't always working. I think there's just a more sober approach to like, wait a minute, let's slow down. Let's just buy the spec for less money.
Right.
Let's put, and then the other thing feeding it too, which came up a couple of times was, all these streamers have their analytics. So, Adam Sandler may be huge for Netflix, but is he as huge for Amazon? I don't know. But they do have certain talent, certain directors, just certain types of stories that work better for them. So again, it's like, well, let's peel this back. Let's just start with a script and we'll add the director who really kills it for us in South America or that's going to play wherever. So I think there's this shift from like, instead of letting the agencies run the show and put all of their sexy talent on and driving up the price,
right?
The streamers and the studios are saying, wait a minute, we're going to build this. We're going to go back to development and we're going to build it in a way that's right for us. That's right for Universal or that's right for Amazon or whatever. I guess we should have started this whole conversation with like a huge caveat. It's not the 90s. Like these are
to be clear, yes.
Are you sure?
To be clear.
It's just that this hasn't happened. This is like so dormant for so long. To see like 10 of these sprout up in a 6-month period is like, whoa, like that's
right.
That's
it's a nice little burst of activity.
Yeah. It's not dominating. Look, there's still gonna be Fantastic Four. There's still gonna be it's not like, oh, this is dominating the movie. Julia Roberts rom-coms are not gonna be the dominant force of the movie, the movie business. But it's just that like for something that was left for dead, Nicole, I think is what
totally.
Like that's kind of the sentiment. And for writers who coming out of the strikes, like looking for glimmers of like what's this new world we're entering into, it's like, oh, they want my original ideas again. Great. Like that's
how
such
refreshing must that feel for the industry, for the community.
Yeah.
Especially after the TV scene, Nicole. Reading your story was so interesting because in TV, all I hear is we want talent attached. We want the big name actors and the big name directors and producers. We want it to feel like there's a reliable showrunner and that this can reliably sell. So the idea that there are these chances being taken on naked scripts, as you put it, with no big talent attached, not based on known IP, just feels like such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And it's, as everyone pointed out too, all it will take is like 3 huge sequels to come out and make, $10 billion. And we'll be right back.
Forget about it all. Yeah. What's back scripts?
But for the minute. Yeah. But I think also the other point was coming out of this strike. Like, I guess in 2008 after the strike, like everyone was at home writing specs apparently, and the market was flooded. And that just didn't happen this time. And so there's been kind of this lull and this like lack of inventory, as a lot of people put it. And then you have, changes in management at Netflix and Disney. So there's kind of been this slow period as these companies are reconfiguring, looking at their slates, reviewing what do we have, what do we need. And so it's kind of it's put everything into like a very slow gear. And so I think that's also increases appetite for let's just buy this, let's get this going and let's buy stuff.
Yeah.
What's the risk calculus around it though? Because again, on the TV side, risk aversion is the name of the game, but this seems, very high risk if you're going in without necessarily talent attached, if you're going with perhaps a lesser known writer, or are these all really, well-known writers who are selling specs right now?
Yeah, they're not. I mean, the sort of sexiest story was this Natan Dotan, whom no one had ever heard of. He wasn't a screenwriter. And there was this very dramatic purchase of his script for $1.25 million. They're going to give him $3 million if it gets made. So by all means, they are not, just these huge names that we're all familiar with. But I think as far as risk aversion, these are all very makeable movies. And something I write about in the story is like, these are, they're not going to require 800 extras on a field in the Czech Republic. Like some of them are very kind of low key. One of them is sort of this eat, pray, love type female self-discovery journey. So I think the thinking is that there isn't as much risk because these are easy to make. Like once you get that talent, once you get that director, this thing's going to be made. It's going to be easy. It's not going to cost a ton. So again, it's going back to that very kind of a little bit more sober approach to making content.
Yeah, when you mentioned those packages, Nicole, I mean, Wolf's alone was like $80 million before like the crew was hired, and there's like packages that we're selling on them were like, you're spending $50-60 million for the script and the talent without even rolling on the, on the set, which again, you can double that, whatever it might be. So now to invest $1 million in this idea and build it out, maybe you don't want to add that talent, but we want to add this $5 million star. It just gives you more of that flexibility, Nicole, where you're not having to just, all right, here's a $70 million check and we're going to hope for the best on a script that maybe even still needs work, Nicole. And now they can do the development and do another round and take their time with it, as you say. Which, so this is kind of back to fundamentals of film development, which has got lost in this era of like, we have to do 40 movies, 50 movies a year. We have to have this ready to go so it's ready in 3 months kind of thing,
Yeah. And I mean, when you look back at those movies that were made in the 90s and that many of them became these huge hits, like they're kind of simple movies, like Lethal Weapon, a lot of the buddy movies.
It's a buddy cop movie, right?
American Pie. I mean, these are not exorbitant, they're not that expensive to make. They have a clever premise, they're well executed, and then it becomes a big hit. So I think that's the hope, is that in a way, they're kind of low risk.
Yeah, exactly. We look at something, like
because you're spending big on the script, but
right.
We don't know what who they're bringing on.
Right. But even look at something, it ends with Us, which was a $25 million movie. It made $350 million, whatever it was worldwide. Like these, back to that risk reward, Elaine. It's like, all right, we instead of spending our $80 million on this one, maybe $160 million by the time it's done, why don't we take more of these kinds of shots? Like those things will still probably happen to a degree, but it's like filling in the gaps more, which I think was, Nicole, even in the 90s, there were still tentpoles, there were still, major IP movies, but you just kind of filled out this slate more with these, like, coming back to this, like, oh, a double is great, a triple is great. Like, we don't
right.
have to
a little more of a balanced market is what this feels like,
Yeah.
where it's not just, IP all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you're scratching back to Gladiator 2, which, and I haven't seen it, but I hear it's fine, it's fun, it's great. It's a night at the movies.
Right.
But really, like, for what it costs, do young people even know there was a Gladiator 1? Like, It just feels like we are reaching the point of really grasping here.
Yeah. And there's also a new crop of stars, of people who want to mold their roles. Chalamet, Zendaya, Paul Mescal. It's like they want to, attach the material. Like, you have a good material, Nicole, to attach these stars to, versus like, Channing Tatum's already doing it, or whatever it might be. It's like you can it helps foster that new generation too, Nicole, which could be exciting.
Yeah.
We'll see how this all turns out in a year, 2 years. Again, this is development and so forth. We'll see what comes to the theaters, but the 2026 multiplex.
But it's a nice note of optimism for the industry right now.
100%.
Yeah. Nice way to end the year.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
After this year.
Optimism. Here we go, Elaine. It's our new 2025 mantra. So it's survive till 25. Well, 25's here, Elaine. So there we go. We're here. We survived. So congratulations.
Well, hey, yeah. Apparently this is a good way to enter it. It's given the writer community a lot of hope.
Exactly. A great read there from Nicole. You can check it out at theankler.com. And just finally over the box office this weekend, Two movies that were totally not Spec scripts. Elaine, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Mufasa versus Sonic. Where are we in the Lowe household?
Have seen neither, but have plans to see Mufasa.
Okay, not a Sonic. All right, Nicole, any family plans for you with Mufasa and Sonic?
I know I'm like the last one to see it. Everyone's seen all of the above, but it's good because I get the reviews. So Mufasa gets the biggest thumbs up. So no need to see Sonic.
Right.
I did see... Yeah, I hear Mufasa is a good one. That's the one to see.
All right, there you go. We'll see what Sonic is tracking bigger. So America is disagreeing with you both, but we shall see where the numbers come in. Now, of course, break that down on Sunday nights in the Wake Up, which you get as part of your subscription at The Ankler. Just go to theankler.com and pop in the old email address to get the newsletters and podcasts here at The Ankler. You can also follow us on the socials at The Ankler on your social platform of choice. You can email Elaine or Richard at podcast@theankler.com. But Elaine, you're still checking that one, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, all right.
But just in case, also email me at Elaine@theankler.com.
is also a valid email address. So great to see you as always, Elaine, and thanks to Nicole, Janice, and Lachlan for joining today as well. And a big thanks to you all for listening. We'll see you next week for a very special holiday edition of the Ankler Podcast.